Consistent with the guidelines that we operate under, which is not to bring the council into disrepute.
You're drawing a line. That's fine. I want to know why you think you are able to make that decision and not the courts, because that's what people are very upset about. They look at and they think you're acting like a dictator.
No, look, the people that support dictators are the people that aren't coming now to Auckland. They're the ones that said Hitler was a social justice warrior and said that the colour of their skin depends your IQ.
But that's not the point.
Now, I've got an obligation, Corin. I'm not against free speech. They can come here. The people that are paying $50,000 in legal fees to promote their right, they can provide them with a,
yes, but I want to know why
somewhere
you
or a
think
cow
it's
paddock
your
somewhere.
Right.
What we're talking about is people who want to use their so-called freedom of speech to deny the rights of other people even to exist as human beings.
We desperately need to discuss divisive issues. There's a whole lot of people in this community who feel that their views don't get heard at all. Valerie?
Yeah, I noticed that the free speech isn't jumping up and down to defend any of those communities, but instead the Free Speech Coalition has decided to jump up and down about free speech to defend a couple of white racists. So should freedom of speech actually just be a baton that's given to the powerful in our society to beat the powerless over the head and shoulders? Because actually, I don't think that's what freedom of speech is about.
It's very hard to argue with people who just shout slogans at you and say, I'm not going to let you hear even what they say. I'm just going to tell you what I think they say, or I want you to think I think they say.
Yeah. I can tell you a couple of things that Lauren Southern, for example, said in her...
We're not interested in that. We're not interested in what you think. We want people to be able to hear it directly. We're not interested in what the mayor thinks. We want people to be able to hear and make up their own minds.
What I'm suggesting is that these people are actually here to incite racial violence.
If she incites racial violence, there's law in New Zealand against that, and we don't have a law that says I can block you because of what I think you might be thinking.
I guess what I'm suggesting is Lauren Southern isn't just thinking these things. She isn't just saying these things. She's jumping on boats to go out and shoot at medical rescue boats. She's mounting vigilante missions into the European Alps. The reality is that this is hate speech.
The Power Station, a popular Auckland concert venue, cancelled tonight's appearance after several groups planned to protest.
The two Canadians were already banned from using council venues and tried to keep the location of their talk secret until this afternoon. But in the end, even that didn't work.
I think it's really important to show fascists, not just here in New Zealand, but all over the world, that we're just not going to stand for it. We're not going to stand for a resurgence of this absurd, fake racial science nonsense.
Aotearoa is not built on, it shouldn't be built on fascist and racist values.
We do not need racism and hate speech in Aotearoa.
What happened in that hour between us releasing the name of the venue and him calling us to cancel, if I had to put money on it, I guess he was threatened. And if that is true, then that means that it was the use or threat of violence in pursuit of political ends, straight up terrorism.
But we did talk to the event's organisers, and they've said that they were only aware of the contents of the speech late this afternoon, and that was the reason that they decided to not allow Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern to be able to speak at that event.
Power station owners Gabriel Marlins and Peter Campbell did not want to appear on camera, but claimed they did not know what the event was, despite police meeting them about it.
The last 24 hours have been a bit of a news whirlwind after controversial Canadian speakers Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux landed in New Zealand amid high drama, top secret locations and threats of protests. After they announced a New Zealand speaking engagement weeks ago, there was outrage from Kiwis, and then Phil Goff banned them from all Auckland Council venues. Following backing from free speech advocates, the pair found another location, but just hours after that location was revealed today, that venue did a U-turn and they cancelled the show. After the fiasco unfolded, News Hub's Paddy Gower sat down with the duo.
People have come and they want to hear us speak. They want to hear our opinions. We should have the right, even if we were intentionally trying to be disrespectful, which we were not, we should have the right to in a free country.
Please welcome News Hub national correspondent Paddy Gower.
So, Paddy,
Paddy, you just talked to these two. What are they like?
Well, it was sort of like being thrown down in front of a machine gun of sort of nitpickery, where you could sort of say to them, hey, look, the sky is blue, and they would sort of come back to you and say, no, it's not. And
not firm friends with the facts is my impression.
Yeah, but they're very good
well rehearsed.
They're very well rehearsed at not being firm friends with the firm facts or whatever it is. You know, they're very good at that. They're professionals, and actually in some respects, in terms of having an intellectual argument with them, they totally nailed me. I just could not compete with them.
So we have been talking for weeks, ever since we learned about these guys, about what the right thing to do is. Do we cover the story and present both sides of it? Do we ignore them? Are we just giving them a soapbox? Do you think the interview that you did was what they wanted?
Yeah, I mean, my personal kind of view on these sorts of things is I think censorship should be the very, 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 very last line of defence. And I mean, I've got quite a lot of faith in New Zealanders in being able to look at something if they want to engage with it. If they do engage with it, they can look at it and see the potential shallowness of the argument. And that's what they would have seen today, is a couple of nitpickers who spend all their time nitpicking, and it's pretty nasty nitpicking.
They've played us, haven't they? They've played New Zealand and won. We've been a sucker. You know, we're still talking about them.
Yeah, but I mean, we've won. New Zealand's won. I mean, they haven't actually got their stage tonight, and they're going to go out of this country losing money. And for a couple of people that believe in all these sorts of kinds of freedoms and everything, actually, well, in the plainest sort of terms, the market has spoken. They're going to have to refund all that coin they got out of here, and they're going to walk out of this country making a loss. And that's called a win for NZ, in my view.
Phil Goff did more for these two than anybody by banning them from Auckland Council buildings. They can't speak in our place, says Phil, and bang, away it went.
You've really elevated their status, and you've elevated this debate, haven't you? Did you need to do that?
These two Canadians weren't known to anybody.
I never heard of these people. The only repetition of their line that I have heard over the last week is from Phil Goff himself.
We've been talking about people that I didn't know about a month ago.
There had been no protest. They had come here because I'm sorry.
We wouldn't have heard about them.
Can I just finish?
Kia ora, good evening. The Prime Minister says she's quite proud New Zealanders have made it clear they don't share the views of far-right Canadian speakers Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux.
They're here because there were no grounds to block them being here. That does not mean we welcome their views.
A small group of free speech supporters rallied in Auckland today after the pair's controversial event was cancelled last night.
Stand up, fight back!
Countered by members of the group Love Aotearoa Hate Racism.
I think you'll see from the reaction they've had from New Zealanders that their views are not those that are shared by this country, and I'm quite proud of that.
Before whisking Neve away, Ardern was serenaded at the airport by Nelson's Nayland College Choir, taking some time to speak to the excited singers, all ready for her first nap at Premier House.
And I'm quite proud of that.
We didn't exactly know who was coming.
Despite police meeting them about it.
You can have freedom of speech, but you really need to edit a lot of things that you say, particularly if a wide variety of people that we associate, that are friends with and deal with, do not agree with what they have to say. They can say whatever they want, but personally, I don't want it in my venue.
Between the time that we sent out the emails and then when we were down at the venue, something changed.
Guys, what do you do about it?
Two sides of a debate coming face to face.
I'm here because a travesty happened yesterday where a private event was sabotaged by people that actually hate the freedom of speech.
What they say is vile. If people want to hear it, they have every right to. You know, it's the same way as if I want to go to a Buddhist temple or a church, I can go.
In the crowd over there, it's actually mainly mixed. It's mostly people defending free speech, which we respect.
What do you think of the noise? It's really hard to talk to people. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, before there were a lot of like fascists out there, and I think that's why they set it up. But now it's not so. It's actually kind of nice.
So those guys were good. But apparently the music was needed because there were fascists up there. Well, fuck all y'all! I'm going home! I haven't come across any fascists yet. We'll let you know if we run across any fascists. So why are you here?
So, yeah, I'm here to defend freedom of speech. It's really hard to talk about all of this because there's so many lies that have been spread by the media.
Absolutely.
You know, they're calling us racists and stuff. We're not racist.
This thing still doesn't work. There you go. Hey, so you want to talk?
Yeah, so all the white supremacists got together today so they could raise money for Tommy Robinson to have his operation because his thing doesn't work. Yeah, that's about all I got to say to you.
And so why do you have a problem with that?
Well, I mean, the problem's not mine, but it makes him upset and he beats his wife because he's an absolute piece of fucking scum.
Okay, there we go. So that's probably the most reasoned argument I've had all day. So why are we here?
Well, we're here, obviously for free speech. I'm more for the prevent Islamification of New Zealand because I've seen what it happens as in Britain. I was a police officer for many years, 6 years, in the core of a really multicultural area, and I fear and I am an Islamophobe because I am physically and mentally scared of what Islam has got the power to do because I've seen it destroy communities, and it will destroy this community if brought in.
Yeah, we had a good chat. We had a good chat, actually. We had a good chat with a Ngāpuri guy, I would say a Māori sovereignty individual, and he understood freedom, that we want freedom. We shook hands, we said, look, we're coming from a free market capitalist point of view, he's maybe coming from a Marxist point of view, but we can agree on an end goal that we all want freedom of speech. We just agree on the means how to get there. I think we've been swamped now by these guys trying to push us out. But, good night, all right!
Okay. Coming through.
That's right, fuck off, Nazi zone! They're running!
There we go. Money shot right here. They're flying a Palestinian flag next to an LGBT rainbow flag, with no irony whatsoever.
Allies gay, allies trans, allies intersex, allies all of us.
Alt-right have an agenda. I still don't know what alt-right is. Hate speech. What's hate speech? Every time I've tried to talk to them in a rational manner, they put their placards up and like, oh, I don't want to speak to you, racist. I want the right to talk to the left. I want rational ideas to arise from that dialogue.
This thing doesn't work. Do you want to...
Shake harder, boy!
You might consider the meat pie to be a prime example of colonial excellence. And while I won't disagree that pies are amazing, I'm just a little tickled by the fact that maybe the world's single best meat pie maker is a man who, not that long ago, escaped the Khmer Rouge to end up in Rotorua, of all places, New Zealand's first official bilingual city. You have had plenty of attention in this country. But relevancy? Nah. Patrick the Pie King. Patrick is relevant. That must be hard to take. Knowing they have relevancy and you don't, that must eat you up inside. I, like many New Zealanders who get a little riled by your message, I don't actually hate you. I pity you.
Massey University's decision to cancel a speaking engagement by former National Party leader Don Brash has ignited a firestorm about free speech. Dr Brash was due to speak in a students' politics club in Palmerston North tomorrow, but the university says it scrapped the booking due to concerns over hate speech and violence from protesters.
The security, safety of our community on campus was potentially under threat, and so that being very paramount for us, we've chosen to cancel.
I must say it appalls me that the university would withdraw the invitation on the basis that unspoken people have made some kind of threat.
I'm not going to become one of Don Brash's homogenous sausages.
Well, I think there is a difference between free speech and speech that works to demean or humiliate other people, and particularly groups of people based on common traits.
When RNZ begins with a lengthy speech in Maori, several sentences, no translation provided, there wouldn't be 3% of the country who actually understand Te Reo, and most of them are not listening to RNZ News at 6 o'clock in the morning.
And so engaging in rich, robust debate around really important issues, using evidence, etc., is absolutely encouraged. However, when the argument turns to things where they are deliberately aiming to demean, humiliate, silence groups based on their particular trait, for me that is a little bit akin to group bullying, if you like. And we don't tolerate bullying in the classroom. We don't tolerate bullying in the playground. Why would we accept bullying of whole groups of people on this campus?
But that, of course, is not why he's banned, remember?
Oh, yes, I know, but you are asking me that question. So, as I say, the reason this talk was cancelled.
Okay, let's hear, Professor.
There were security issues.
This will be a security threat, and by the way, it's probably inconsistent with the guidelines that we operate under.
Isn't that how you do the story? You kind of go, "You suck." It's not like a both sides thing. You're kind of like, "You're a racist," and that's the truth.
Yeah. I'll put whatever I want on your posters as long as you think you can put them up. Why is your hand shaking? You seem very nervous.
The New Zealand Bill of Rights, have you heard of it?
Oh, God, Jesus Christ, you're an idiot. You're stuttering. What the fuck? It's a community of people.
You do know who's been taking them down?
Yeah, because it's not just a single individual. It's been a whole community of people.
You know more than one person that's been taking them down?
Absolutely, because this
and
entire
then you blame me for
was
wasting paper and tape.
Well, we've recycled them.
Just because people don't like what he has to say or some of the things that he has said in the past doesn't really justify getting him off campus.
I think there was certainly an interest in hearing him talk.
And I reckon that Don Brash should have been able to come here.
The university's Vice-Chancellor is now refusing to answer questions about how she reached her decision, only to say a threat of gun violence online forced her hand. Police say they were not consulted before the decision was made, and there's been no complaint about a threat.
Newly released emails have led Don Brash to call for Massey University's Vice-Chancellor to resign. His speech there was cancelled, and at the time the reason given was concerns about security.
A month before Brash was due to speak, Thomas sent an email to a colleague saying if she stopped him from speaking, it'd hit the fan in the media, but that the racist behaviour of Brash couldn't be ignored. She wanted to cut Brash off at the pass and asked what approaches the university could use to stop him speaking, even mentioning financial agreements with uni clubs.
I guess from our perspective, she's broken our trust, and in terms of whether she resigns or not, that's a question for students and staffs at Massey and obviously her bosses on the university council. But I guess, we're concerned that, the rules of the game has changed in terms of having robust debate with our university leaders.
Don Brash speaks at Auckland University tomorrow night about free speech.
Again, we didn't deny him his platform. We were always going to let him speak.
Did you listen?
We did listen.
We felt intimidated. Like, I was speaking and people were throwing things at us, people were yelling at us, people were swearing.
And one of the organisers got up to say her piece. She'd written two of the organisers got up. They wanted to speak. One Māori organiser, one Pākehā, both to sort of oppose Brash's rhetoric. Squad. They were drowned out, right? Like, the audience would not let them speak. They were booing. They were yelling slurs. They were being absolute. They were like pounding on the table and saying Brash, 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 Brash.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for proving our case.
It seems to me that the protesters have absolutely proven the case for the affirmative. You don't want to debate the issues, you just want to shout your opponents down. PC culture shuts down free speech, and you're proving it. You're proving it. Madam, you proved my case.
So as is traditional, we reverse the speaking order, so I welcome back the leader of the negative team to conclude their team's case.
Haven't had this much fun for a long time.
Oh, I tell you what, Don Brash hasn't been this popular since his 2004 Aotearoa speech. In fact, I don't think he was even that popular after that.
When we lose the right to speak, the right to debate ideas, even controversial ones, we're on a very slippery slope. National supports free speech, even if we disagree with what is being said.
Another call tonight for a high-profile speaker to be banned. National wants US Army whistleblower Chelsea Manning barred from entering New Zealand. She was imprisoned for leaking classified documents to WikiLeaks. National says she shouldn't profit from talking about her crimes.
National wants her blocked, saying she's a threat to our relationship with the United States.
The question is whether she has a right to come into the country. The Immigration Act is very clear that she doesn't. This isn't a question of whether she should be able to speak. My concerns would be the same whether she was coming for a holiday or for business.
There are other examples of previously convicted criminals that have been allowed entry into New Zealand. If these convicted criminals were able to speak in New Zealand, why is Manning any different?
They called him the Wolf of Wall Street. Others said he's lower than pond scum. You've had to look back on your own life, and the reborn Jordan is making millions and millions of dollars. You've paid back a lot of the money you own. But in some ways, aren't you glorifying or living off the mistakes that you made?
I think the key to success is to live off the mistakes of your past. They want to know my story, and they know that I'm not full of crap.
I think you'll see from the reaction they've had from New Zealanders that their views are not those that are shared by this country, and I'm quite proud of that.
Prime Minister, how do you characterise Chelsea Manning?
Oh, you know, look, my version of these events is that simply, you know, we are a nation that allows free speech. We've seen a number of examples recently where we've acknowledged that in allowing people to share their views. And that's New Zealand. That's as it should be, but we should be consistent about that as well.
I'm confused.
When the forces of hate and division wash up on our shores, we need to stand together for our values.
But didn't Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern have a lot to say as well?
Well, the problem there was that they came. We didn't ban them from coming.
But
so
you supported not giving them a visa, though.
No, I spoke about how we have a right to protect ourselves against hate speech, which is defined in New Zealand law. It's existed for a really long time. And to me, I probably wouldn't have given the visa to them, and I've said that.
You supported not giving them a visa, though?
No, I spoke about how we have a right to protect ourselves. I probably wouldn't have given the visa to them, and I've said that.
Right.
But what did happen is that they did come, and there were protests. So, you know, we've got that tradition of free speech.
The Free Speech Coalition hopes Ms Gutterman continues to support the principle of free speech, no matter the politics of the individual speakers.
Nigel, so you're at the Pullman, and I guess there are protesters out there, the usual mob. Can I ask you this? What is it about the far left? You know, free speech is okay as long as they agree. And if they don't agree, they pack a tanty. What is it about them?
Well, you know, I think it starts now through the education system, in particular the universities. We used to be brought up being taught critical thinking, being taught, here's a problem, here are two approaches to it, they're both legitimate, and you make your mind up. What we're now drilling in to our millennials is, here's a problem, here's one solution that is noble and good, and the alternative is evil, bad, almost akin to neo-Nazism. We're actually teaching our kids thinking that is fundamentally anti-democratic. It's filling them with hate, and all over the Western world. You know, we see people who want to come and speak effectively being shouted down, attempts to stop their argument even being heard. It is a very, very bad place we're getting to.
Because when people like Nigel Farage come here, I just want to remind him, and I might have to use a dirty old C word, that we've already suffered under the kind of vile rhetoric that politicians like him espouse. That word is colonization. And we've had enough of it. We're already suffering.
This is good. Yeah, where's the entrance?
Refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear. Refugees are welcome here. Well, I didn't vote for you.
Don? Well, I initially was saying, yes, why not a Maori Santa? But when you showed me the picture of the Santa, I thought it doesn't look remotely like a Santa or anyone's conventional view of what a Santa is. I mean, I'm not surprised the kids were puzzled.
Do you think the Don should ever be allowed to speak here again?
We'll stop him.
If we leave our enemies to build power, they're going to build power. That's what happens when you don't try to repress people who are your enemy.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
They're not talking about you. They're waiting for this stupid woman to sit down. Just wait for her. Yeah.
Okay.
She's climbing all over people.
What's she doing?
I don't have no idea.